My name is Piper Thatcher. I'm 23 years old. For 3 years, I delivered pizza to a mansion where an old man tipped me exactly $2. Never more, never less. And for most of that time, I thought he was just the cheapest customer on my route. I thought he was one of those wealthy, tight-fisted old men who lived in a giant house, ordered the same thing every week, and acted like handing over an extra couple of dollars was some kind of moral failure. I was wrong. The week he died, a lawyer called me to his office and handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a DNA test, a brass key, and a handwritten note. And that note made me realize those $2 had never been about the money. They had been about my father, a man I lost when I was 10, a man I thought the world had forgot. A man this old stranger apparently knew far better than I ever realized. And what that key opened pulled me into a room full of people who wanted me gone. They called me the pizza girl. They said I didn't belong. They tried to erase me the same way they erased my father 25 years earlier. They picked the wrong girl. Before I take you into that room, if stories about family, betrayal, and long-buried truth mean something to you, take a second to like this video and subscribe. And if you want, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. Now let me take you back to the beginning, back to a cold Saturday evening in March. Back to the first time I knocked on that door. I grew up in Grayfield, Virginia. It's the kind of town where everybody knows your business, but nobody volunteers to help you carry it. If your lights get shut off, people hear about it. If your mom leaves, people hear about it. If your car starts making that bad noise and you're praying it makes it another month, people hear about that too. But hearing isn't the same thing as helping. By the time I was 23, I had learned that lesson so well it might as well have been tattooed under my skin. I lived in a tiny apartment above Rosie's Wash and Fold on 2nd Street. Every morning, the heat from the dryers downstairs rose through the floorboards and made my bedroom smell like detergent and hot cotton. Some mornings it was lavender. Some mornings it was ocean breeze. Some mornings it was whatever discount soap people bought when they were trying to make $10 last until payday. I paid $450 a month for that apartment. If that sounds cheap, let me be clear, it was not charming. The windows rattled in winter. The pipes knocked like they were arguing with the walls. And one kitchen drawer only opened if you lifted it first and then yanked hard to the left. But it was mine. And when you've spent enough of your life losing things, mine starts to sound like luxury. I worked evenings at Tony's Pizzeria 5 nights a week, sometimes 6. Tony Russo hired me when I was 17, back when I still looked half-starved and tried too hard to seem older than I was. He didn't ask many questions. That was one of the reasons I stayed. At first I folded boxes, washed pans, answered phones. Eventually I started delivering. And then I just kept delivering. 1 day became 1 month. 1 month became 1 year. 1 year became 6. You'd be surprised how fast your life becomes something you didn't exactly choose, but got used to. My dad died when I was 10. His name was Owen. He had lung disease, the slow kind. The kind that doesn't arrive like lightning. It arrives like weathering, like paint fading, like wood softening, like something strong being taken apart one invisible thread at a time. He was a carpenter, not rich, not famous, not one of those guys who had a business logo on a truck and 10 employees and a waiting list. He built furniture in a rented garage and sold pieces at the weekend market. Tables, frames, shelves, little benches, things made by hand, sanded smooth, sturdy enough to last. He was the kind of man who showed up every day until his body wouldn't let him anymore. And even then, he still tried. My mother, Jolene, lasted 2 years after he died. One Tuesday morning, she said she was going to the store. She never came back. I was 12. I wish I could tell you I got closure, some note, some explanation. Some revelation years later that made it all make sense. I didn't. She just left. And after that, my grandmother raised me. She was quiet, practical, and not especially warm, but she stayed. And when you're a kid, sometimes staying is the warmest thing anyone can do. Then she died in her sleep when I was 17. Heart gave out. No drama, no warning, just gone. And I'm not telling you all this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because when you lose everyone by 17, you learn something fast. No one is coming to save you, so you save yourself. You get a job, you pay rent, you buy your own toothpaste, you learn how long milk lasts after the sell-by date. You stop expecting rescue and start measuring life in what you can hold together by yourself. That was me. By 23, I had built a whole identity around not needing anybody. And that's why what happened next hit me so hard, because it wasn't money that changed everything. It was the possibility that someone had been looking for me, someone had known exactly who I was. And I hadn't known it at all. I do remember one odd thing my father said when I was little. I must have been 8 or 9. He mentioned, casually, like he was commenting on the weather, that he had family out there somewhere. Not nearby, not in our life, just out there. I didn't ask questions. I was a kid. And I think some part of me assumed that if those people mattered, they would already be around. Kids are simple that way. We think absence explains itself. We think if people loved us, they would be visible. I would learn later how wrong that can be. The first time I drove to 414 West Haven Drive, I thought I had the wrong address. The road narrowed, then curved, then turned private. At the end of it sat this enormous white columned house with a circular driveway and a lawn so perfectly green it looked fake. Not healthy. Curated, the kind of lawn that says somebody pays another person to care more about grass than I care about my own future. I had delivered to nice houses before. Grayfield had pockets of old money hidden behind brick walls and tasteful landscaping. But this wasn't just nice. This was another category entirely. I parked my beat-up Honda beside a stone pillar with the house number worked into it in black iron. I checked the receipt twice. Pepperoni pizza, 1 large, paid cash. I grabbed the bag, walked up the steps, and rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened, and there he was. An old man in a cardigan that had definitely lived through at least 3 presidencies. Thin shoulders, white hair, reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. Not frail exactly. But pared down, like life had carved away everything extra. He looked at me in this strangely still way, not confused, not distracted, not impatient. He looked at me like someone looking at a sentence they had read before. "Pepperoni," he said. "Yes, sir." 1850. He reached into his pocket, handed me a 20 and a 1, and said, "Keep the rest." I did the math in my head. $2.50, that was it. From a house with a 3-car garage. I smiled anyway, because smiling was part of the job. Then I walked back to my car thinking, well, rich people stay rich for a reason. Back at Tony's, I told Danny, one of the other drivers, and he laughed. "Old man Ashford," he said. "That guy probably counts his napkins." I laughed too. At the time, it was easy to make him a type. The cheap old man in the mansion. The human version of exact change. What I didn't know was that he was about to become the most consistent person in my week. The next Saturday, the same address ordered again. Same pizza, same time, and Rosa, my manager, told me something strange. "He asked for you." I looked up from the counter. "For me," she shrugged. "Said he wants the girl from last week." I remember laughing a little. "Maybe he likes my customer service face." "Maybe," she said. "His money spends." So I took the order. And when he opened the door, it was him again. Same cardigan, same glasses, same unreadable look. He handed me a 20 and a 1. "Keep the rest." $2, then he paused. "How's your week been?" That caught me off guard. Nobody really asks that when they don't want something. People say, "How are you?" The way they say, "Bless you" after a sneeze, automatically. Ritualistically, not as a real question, but he waited, like he expected an answer. Fine," I said. "Busy," he nodded once. "Take care on the roads tonight." Then he closed the door. That was it. The week after, same thing, and the week after that. And the week after that, every Saturday, same order, same house, same $2 tip, same pause before the door shut. Sometimes he asked how work was. Sometimes whether I was eating enough. Once he noticed a bruise on my wrist before I had even fully stepped into the porch light. "Put ice on that when you get home," he said. Another time he asked if my car was making the same clicking sound it had made 2 weeks before. I just stared at him. Because I had forgotten he could hear it. That's how regular it became. He noticed things, not in a creepy way, not like someone prying, more like someone who had decided small details mattered. I didn't think much of it at first. Then eventually I started expecting it, not the $2, the attention, which felt strange to admit even to myself. Because by then, nobody in my life really asked me anything except whether I could cover a shift. But every Saturday at 6:15, Murray Ashford opened his front door and acted like my existence had continuity, like I had been somewhere before this moment and would continue after it. And when your life is mostly work, bills, and exhaustion, that kind of recognition lands deeper than you'd think. Sometimes he told little stories, nothing dramatic, a river where a boy used to fish, a wood shop that always smelled like cedar, a dog that used to sleep under a workbench, a boy who could never remember where he left the measuring tape. I thought they were just old man stories. The kind older people collect like pocket change, random memories with the shine worn off. I didn't know he was talking about my father, and I definitely didn't know he was talking about him to me. 3 years passed that way. Think about that. 3 full years, around 150 Saturdays, snow, rain, humidity so thick the pizza box sweated in my hands, wind that cut through my jacket, didn't matter. The order always came in. Same time, same pizza, same request, me. At some point, my coworkers started joking that I had a loyal fan club of one. Danny called him, "Your millionaire boyfriend." Rosa rolled her eyes and told him to get back to work. I never corrected them because I didn't have anything real to correct them with. All I knew was that Murray Ashford was my most predictable customer. And in a life where predictability was rare, I guess that made him important before I ever understood why. Then one Saturday, everything changed. I drove out to West Haven with the usual order tucked into the insulated bag. I walked up the same front steps, rang the bell. And instead of Murray, the door opened to a man in his 50s with a pressed shirt, an expensive watch, and a face that looked permanently irritated by the existence of other people. He took the pizza box from me without saying thank you, didn't look at the receipt, didn't tip, didn't even fully meet my eyes. He just looked at me like I was dirt tracked onto his porch, then shut the door in my face. I stood there for a second, holding the empty thermal bag. Something felt wrong immediately. Not because of the missing tip, because of the silence. No pause, no question, no Murray, just a slammed ending where a routine used to be. The next Saturday, no order came in. Then the one after that. Then the one after that. I tried calling the number on file, no answer. Eventually, I asked Rosa if she had heard anything. She set down her clipboard and softened. "Honey," she said, "I heard the old man at West Haven passed away." I didn't say anything for a second. "I'm sorry," she added. I know he was a regular, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous because technically he was just a customer. But I sat in the break room for 10 minutes after that and stared at the vending machine like I had forgotten how grief worked. Because who was I to grieve him? What was he to me? An address. A transaction, a routine, and yet every Saturday for 3 years he had asked about my week. Then suddenly he was gone, and I realized something awful and simple. Nobody else was going to ask. 3 days later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. I answered because I thought maybe it was Tony calling from somebody else's phone. Instead, a measured male voice said, "Ms. Thatcher, my name is Harold Fenn. I'm an attorney. Mr. Murray Ashford left something for you. Could you come to my office?" I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded absurd. "Are you sure you have the right person?" "Yes," he said, "quite sure." His office was above the old hardware store on Main Street. Narrow staircase, faded carpet, a brass nameplate that had probably looked impressive in 1978. I went straight from work, still in my Tony's shirt, pizza sauce under one fingernail, hair tied back. Work sneakers squeaking slightly on the wood floor. Harold Fenn stood when I came in. He was in his late 60s, I think, salt and pepper hair, vest that fit a little too tightly across the middle. Kind eyes, but the kind that had seen enough life to stop being surprised by cruelty. He motioned for me to sit down. Then he slid a sealed envelope across the desk. Heavy cream paper. My name wasn't on it, just 5 handwritten words, for the girl at the door, and underneath that, M.A. My hands were steady when I opened it. I remember that because later I wondered why they didn't shake. Inside were 3 things. The first was a lab report, official header, certified letterhead. At the top it said, Grand Paternal Relationship Analysis. I skimmed down to the bottom, and there it was. Probability of grand paternal relationship, 99.97%. The second item was a small brass key, old-fashioned, stamped with the number *7714**. The third was a folded note in blue ink. I opened it. 5 words, I'm sorry, you have his eyes. I looked up at Harold. His eyes, I said. Whose eyes? Harold folded his hands and said the sentence that split my life in 2. Your father's. Owen Ashford. And there it was. The old man who tipped me $2 every Saturday for 3 years was my grandfather. I don't think the room spun. I don't think I gasped. Nothing cinematic happened. I just sat there, holding proof that the man I had written off as a cheap regular had known exactly who I was, and I had no idea who he was. Harold spoke quietly. Owen Ashford was Murray's second son. Second son, not friend, not employee, not distant relation, son. He left the family 25 years ago, Harold continued. Then he corrected himself. Or more accurately, he was pushed out. That word mattered. Pushed, not left, pushed. I stared at the DNA report again. My father had said he had family out there. He had been right. Harold told me the story in pieces. 25 years earlier, my father, Owen, had refused to join the family real estate business run by his older brother, Garrett. Garrett saw furniture making as beneath the Ashford name. A waste, a hobby, something embarrassing. My father didn't care. He wanted to work with wood. He wanted to make things with his hands. And instead of accepting that, Garrett spent years slowly poisoning Murray against him, calling him unstable, irresponsible, ungrateful, telling Murray that Owen was throwing away his future. Telling him Owen didn't respect the family, and over time Murray stopped reaching out, or so my father believed. What actually happened was worse. My father wrote letters. 14 of them over 15 years, every one addressed to 414 West Haven Drive, every one sent to his father. Murray never saw a single one. Garrett intercepted them, kept them. Locked them away in a drawer in his study. My father died at 38 believing his own father had chosen silence. And 5 years before Murray died, he discovered the letters by accident. He had gone into Garrett's study while Garrett was away. He found the drawer, found the envelopes, unopened. Years of my father reaching back toward home and every attempt buried. That day changed him, Harold said. I believe it. How could it not? Imagine finding proof that your son had been knocking on the door of your life for 15 years, while someone standing inside kept bolting it shut. I asked Harold why Murray hadn't contacted me directly. He sighed, because by then Garrett controlled too much. His phone, his appointments, his visitors. Murray's body was failing, though his mind remained sharp. Garrett used dependence as leverage. Then he leaned forward slightly. Murray found one thing Garrett never monitored. I looked at him. Saturday pizza delivery. And suddenly everything I'd thought I understood rearranged itself. The same order, the same time, the same request, the same $2. It had never been random. It had been a way in, a loophole, a private meeting hidden inside a public transaction. Harold told me there was a second will, a later will, one Garrett did not know about. And if that will was to be executed properly, I needed to be present at the reading. Friday morning, 10 o'clock, I gripped the brass key so hard it left marks in my palm. What if I don't go? Harold didn't soften it. Then Garrett inherits everything under the previous will, and the truth about your father stays buried. I thought about that. About my father dying at 38 believing he had been discarded. About all those years of silence that hadn't really been silence at all. If I walked away, then Garrett's version won. Not just legally. Historically, emotionally, permanently. When's the reading? I asked again, though I had heard him. Friday, 10 a.m., then he added something I never forgot. And Piper, wear whatever you want. You don't owe them a costume. I want to pause here for 1 second. Because if you've ever lost someone, and then learned a truth about them after they were already gone, you know that particular kind of ache. It's grief, but with a second blade hidden inside it. Because now you're mourning them and the truth at the same time. I felt that sitting in Harold's office, not because of inheritance, not because of money. Because for the first time in 13 years, someone was telling me my father had existed in somebody else's heart, that he had mattered, that he had been loved. And if you've ever had a moment like that, where a dead person became suddenly larger, more real, more complicated than you knew, then you understand why I couldn't walk away. So I didn't. The day before the reading, Harold suggested I come by West Haven to sign preliminary paperwork and view the property records attached to the will. I drove out in my 10-year-old Honda wearing jeans, sneakers, and a flannel shirt because that was what I owned. The house looked exactly the same. White columns, immaculate lawn, long drive. Except this time, with Murray gone, the place felt less like a home and more like a stage set after the lead actor had died. I rang the bell. The man who answered was the same one who had grabbed the pizza box the last night I ever saw Murray. Garrett Ashford, 50s, clean-shaven, silver cufflinks. The posture of a man who expected the world to step back for him. He stared at me for 2 seconds, then recognition clicked. "You're the pizza girl." I almost smiled. "I'm here about Mr. Ashford's estate." He gave a short laugh. "The estate? Sweetheart, I think you've got the wrong house. Harold Fenn asked me to come." That changed his face, just slightly, but enough. Harold's name meant something. It landed. "I don't know what Harold told you," he said, "but there is nothing here for you. This is a family matter. I understand. Then you understand you should leave." I didn't move. "I was asked to be here." He stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. Then he lowered his voice. "Listen carefully. If you show up tomorrow making claims on my father's estate, my attorney will file fraud charges by Monday, and I know Tony Russo. One phone call and you won't be delivering anything. There's a certain kind of threat that wealthy people use, not loud, not dramatic, just practical. Like they are gently explaining the size of your place in the world. Before I could answer, the door opened a few inches behind him and a woman appeared. Early 50s, blonde, pearl earrings. The kind of posture that comes from decades of looking down at people without ever lowering your chin. She looked at me from sneakers to ponytail and said, to Garrett but loud enough for me to hear, "Please tell me this is a joke." That was Vivian Ashford. And if Garrett was the iron fist, Vivian was the polished manicure on top of it. She disappeared back into the house, but her voice carried. Sharp, controlled, disgusted. Garrett stayed where he was. "My father was 81, he said. His mind was not what it used to be. Young people see an old man in a big house and they imagine opportunity. I didn't come here for opportunity. Then, what did you come for? And I don't know what made me ask it then. Except maybe anger. Maybe instinct, maybe my father standing invisibly at my shoulder. But I looked straight at him and said, 'Did you know my father?' For 1 second, just one, Garrett went still. Then the mask came back. 'I don't have a brother,' he said, present tense. Not I had a brother asterisk, not my brother passed away, not we were estranged asterisk. I don't have a brother, like Owen had never existed, like erasure was cleaner when spoken grammatically. I felt the brass key in my pocket, warm under my fingers. 'You can threaten my job,' I said. 'You can threaten a lawsuit, but I think you're the one who should be worried about what comes out of that room tomorrow.' I hadn't planned to say that, it just came out, and I saw it hit. The jaw tightening, the hand moving toward the doorknob like he needed something solid. 'Tomorrow at 10, I said. "I'll be there." Then I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't look behind me. but I could feel him watching me all the way down the drive. My hands didn't start shaking until I was at the stop sign. That night, I sat on my bed with the brass key on the nightstand and the only photo I had of my father propped against the lamp. In the photo, I'm 5. He's younger than I can emotionally process now, smiling, holding up a hand-carved wooden picture frame with pride like it's the finest thing anybody's ever made. I don't remember the day that picture was taken, but I remember the smell of sawdust, and sometimes memory doesn't come back as images, sometimes it comes back as atmosphere, texture, warmth, a sound. A smell I called Rosa, because some people don't become family by blood. They become family by being the person you call when the floor drops. She listened while I told her everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she just said, "That man ordered pizza every Saturday for 3 years. Same time, same order, same request, always you." "You tell me that's a coincidence. I don't know what it is." "I do," she said. "That man wanted to see his granddaughter. And that's the only way he knew how." I sat there after we hung up and let that settle into me. My father had spent years trying to reach his own father. My grandfather had spent the last years of his life trying to reach me. Both of them blocked, rerouted, limited by the same man. And all of it hidden behind money, reputation, and the kind of family image people kill truth to protect. That night I barely slept. Not because I was scared of Garrett. I was. But underneath that was something stronger. Rage, not hot rage, not explosive rage, the colder kind, the kind that makes you very still. My father had been rewritten. And somebody expected me to accept the edit. I wasn't going to. Friday morning, 9:47 a.m. I walked into Harold Fenn's office wearing the cleanest flannel I owned. No pizza stains, jeans. Work boots instead of sneakers. Hair tied back, no makeup, no costume, just me. Harold already had coffee poured, one black, one with cream. He remembered how I took it from our first meeting. That tiny detail nearly undid me more than anything else, because care is often loudest in its smallest forms. Before anyone else arrived, he opened a file and slid a photograph toward me. It showed 14 envelopes, cream-colored, addressed by hand, postmarks spanning 15 years, all sealed, all unopened. "These are the letters Owen sent Murray," Harold said. "Every one intercepted before your grandfather ever saw them." I picked up the photo. My father's handwriting was visible on the top envelope, the same slant I remembered from old birthday cards. My name in blue ink, little loops in the Y. That strange tightening in my throat began again. "Did Murray read them?" "Everyone," Harold said, "after he found them. Then he hid them somewhere Garrett would never think to look." He tapped the key. "Safe deposit box 7714. So that was what the key was for, not treasure, truth. Then Harold showed me something else. A bank record. A mortgage lien tied to a rental property in Murray's name. Borrower, Garrett Ashford. Amount, $380,000. I looked at the figure twice. Then a third time. Harold's expression stayed even. Garrett took out this loan using Murray's property as collateral. The authorization signature appears to be Murray S. Appears, it's a forgery. I stared at him. "In Virginia," he said, "forging authorization to encumber an elderly person's property can qualify as elder financial abuse." The room seemed to sharpen around that sentence. "You're telling me he can't challenge the will without risking exposure?" Harold nodded once. "That is a fair summary." I pushed the paper back to him. "I'm not here to ruin anybody. I just want what Murray meant me to have." "I know," he said, "but Garrett may not give you a clean path." From outside, I heard car doors closing. 1, 2, 3, Harold looked at his watch. "They're here." I slipped the key into my pocket and stood. No dramatic music, no sudden courage, just a decision, one foot in front of the other. That's how most bravery actually works. The conference room was small. Long oak table, leather chairs, a window overlooking Main Street, water glasses set out by a paralegal, a notary stamp on the corner, paper stacked neatly. It felt less like the setting for a family reckoning, and more like the room where insurance disputes go to die. Garrett walked in first in a charcoal suit and a tie that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Vivian came behind him in cream silk and diamonds. Their son, Bradley, followed with the loose confidence of somebody who had never once worried about rent. Late 20s, broad-shouldered, expensive watch, phone in hand. A family accountant named Helen Marsh came in with a laptop. Then Daniel Reeves, the notary. Then me. Bradley looked up, blinked, and actually said it out loud. "Wait, is that the pizza girl?" Vivian's mouth twitched with amusement. Garrett turned to Harold. "What is this?" "Mr. Ashford requested Piper Thatcher be present," Harold said calmly. Garrett didn't sit right away. "Who authorized this person to be in the room?" "Murray did." That was the tone of the morning, their indignation. Harold's calm. I sat at the far end of the table. Folded my hands, rough hands, short nails, small burn mark on my wrist from the pizza oven. Across from me, Vivian's manicure gleamed under the light. I was flannel in a room full of tailored fabric. Sneakers on wool carpet, the visual insult to their idea of who belonged. And I could feel every person in that room clocking the difference. Every person except Harold. And in a way that mattered most, every person except the one who wasn't there anymore. Harold opened the first folder. He began reading the original will, the older one. It was straightforward. 60% of the estate to Garrett, 20% to a charitable trust, 20% to expenses and taxes, no mention of me, no mention of my father, no surprises. I saw the tension drain out of Garrett's shoulders. Vivian squeezed his hand. Bradley actually smirked. Then he leaned slightly toward me and said, not quietly, "Guess you came all this way for nothing, pizza girl." I looked at him but said nothing. Vivian gave Harold one of those fake gracious smiles women like her perfect over decades. "Thank you, Harold. Now perhaps you can show this young lady out." Harold didn't move. He set the first will aside. Then he reached into his briefcase and brought out a second folder, thicker, sealed with wax. He placed it in the center of the table. "There is," he said, "a second document," and the air in the room changed so fast it was almost physical. Garrett stood up so abruptly his chair screeched backward. "There is no second document. I assure you," Harold said, "there is. I was with my father every day for the last 5 years. You controlled his phone," Harold said, "his schedule. His visitors. You would not necessarily know about a private legal meeting that occurred while you were in Richmond 2 years ago." Garrett lost color. Vivian leaned forward. "This is absurd. This document was witnessed, notarized, and filed with the county clerk," Harold said. "It supersedes the prior will." Bradley pointed at me. "This is a scam." "She probably set this up." That was the first time I spoke. I turned to him and said evenly, "I delivered pizza to your grandfather every Saturday for 3 years. He knew my name. He asked me how my week was. He noticed when I burned my wrist. Did you even know his favorite topping?" Bradley opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Helen stopped typing. Daniel picked up his pen. Garrett sat down slowly. "Read it," he said. So Harold did. The second will revoked all prior wills and codicils. Then it divided the estate into 3 meaningful parts. First, the house at 27 Elm Street. A 2-bedroom cottage with a detached wood shop in the back. The house where Owen Ashford had grown up. That house was left to me. Along with safe deposit box 7714 at First National Bank. Second, an education trust in my name for $120,000, specifically designated for vocational or academic training. Third, the remaining liquid assets not otherwise assigned were to be placed into a charitable education fund named the Owen Ashford Memorial Scholarship. That detail hit the room harder than the money. Because it said in legal language, permanent and undeniable, Owen existed. He mattered. He would be named. Garrett's son was named Bradley. The scholarship was named Owen. The dead brother he erased had just been carved into the future. Harold kept reading. The West Haven mansion remained with Garrett, but with a condition. He was required to repay the $380,000 mortgage debt taken against Murray's rental property within 12 months. Failure to do so would trigger a forced sale. Helen Marsh stopped typing completely. Then Harold placed the DNA certificate on the table. Independent lab, 99.97% probability. Grand paternal match. Vivian spoke first. This is impossible. No, Harold said. It is verified. Then he laid out photographs of the 14 intercepted letters, cream envelopes, postmarks, handwriting, evidence of 15 stolen years. These were found in a locked drawer in Garrett Ashford's study, Harold said. The room went silent. And I don't mean, nobody talked for a second. I mean the kind of silence where everyone present understands that reality has changed and there is no going back to the version from 5 minutes ago. Vivian recovered first. Those could be fabricated. The postmarks are verified, Harold said. The handwriting matches records on file. If contested, they will be examined under probate discovery. Garrett still hadn't spoken. His face had become that careful blank wealthy men use when they are doing frantic internal math. Bradley, on the other hand, lost control fast. He came around the table toward me. You are not taking anything from this family. Daniel stood up. Harold didn't raise his voice, but he didn't need to. Mr. Ashford, sit down. I stood too, not because Bradley scared me, but because I learned a long time ago not to stay seated while someone tries to use height as power. We were maybe 3 feet apart. He was taller, heavier, angrier. But anger is not the same thing as moral ground. Your grandfather ordered pizza every Saturday for 3 years just to see me, I said. That's not a scam. That's the only honest thing that happened in this family in a long time. Bradley looked at his father, waiting, wanting permission to keep escalating. And then Harold played the final card without changing his tone at all. If this will is contested, he said, a full probate audit will be required. That audit will examine all mortgages, liens, transfers, and authorizations associated with Mr. Ashford's assets. The meaning landed, not just on Garrett, on everyone. Vivian, Helen, Bradley. Garrett understood first, I saw it. The calculation. If he fought, the forged mortgage came out. If the forged mortgage came out, then this stopped being a family embarrassment and became a criminal problem. He couldn't challenge the truth without dragging his own fraud into sunlight. Sit down, Bradley, Garrett said, and just like that, the loudest man in the room became quiet. Bradley sat. Harold looked at me. Would you like to proceed with signatures? I would, so I signed, blue ink, page after page. Daniel notarized each one with a quiet mechanical stamp that sounded, in that little room, like the end of a long sentence. When it was finished, I said clearly, I'm accepting the Elm Street property, the education trust, and the contents of safe deposit box 7714, nothing more. Then I turned to Garrett. He was staring at the wall behind me, not at me. I'm not suing you, I said. I'm not calling the police over those letters. Whatever you've done, that's between you and your conscience. That got his eyes on me. But I am going to take that key, I said, touching my pocket, go to the bank, and read every letter my father wrote to a man who loved him and couldn't reach him. Nobody spoke. I pushed in my chair, shook Harold's hand, nodded to Daniel. Helen met my eyes and gave the smallest nod back, not alliance, not affection, just recognition. Then I walked out. I had just reached the hallway when I heard heels behind me. I turned. Vivian, of course. And I knew before she opened her mouth that this was not going to be an apology. It was. Piper, she said, lowering her voice. Listen, Garrett made mistakes. I said nothing. We both know that. But if that mortgage becomes public, the business, the house, everything we've built, that's not my problem. For the first time, her face lost all polish, not remorse, panic. I'm asking you as a human being, please don't make this public. I looked at her for a long second. This was the same woman who had called my father a failure less than an hour earlier. The same woman who had looked at me and seen a hustle. Now she wanted mercy. Funny how quickly class manners collapse when consequences become real. 5 minutes ago, I said, you told a room full of people that my father couldn't cut it. You called me a con artist, and now you're asking me for kindness. She didn't answer. Here's the truth. I could have humiliated them. I could have gone to the paper. I could have turned Grayfield inside out with gossip and records and righteous anger. Some people would have. Maybe some people should have, but that wasn't why I was there. I'm not making anything public, I told her, but not because you asked, because my grandfather didn't do this to destroy you. He did it so I would know where I came from. I turned away, then I looked back one last time. You don't get to insult my family and then ask my family for a favor. And I walked down the stairs. Outside, sunlight hit Main Street like nothing had happened. My Honda was still at the meter. There was a parking ticket under the wiper, and I laughed, actually laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in weeks, because some days life hands you inheritance, vindication, and a $40 ticket all before lunch. The next part didn't happen in one dramatic burst. It happened the way consequences usually happen, quietly, administratively. I learned later that Garrett's attorney reviewed the second will, the DNA report, the photographic evidence of the letters, and the mortgage issue, and advised him, in very direct terms, not to contest. His lawyer filed an appearance, then withdrew. The bank opened a fraud review on the forged authorization. Garrett was given 90 days to repay the debt or face a criminal referral. Within 6 weeks, the West Haven mansion was on the market. By 4 months, it sold. Garrett and Vivian moved to Roanoke. People said it was for a fresh start. Grayfield people always call forced retreat a fresh start when they want to stay polite. Bradley, as far as I heard, had to get a job. I don't know where, I never asked. And around town, the old story started cracking. Because that's another thing about small towns, truth travels slower than gossip, but once it gets moving, it sticks better. A few older people remembered Owen, the quiet carpenter, the boy with good hands. The son who disappeared. And one by one, people began connecting details that Garrett had spent decades arranging into a lie. I didn't feed any of it, didn't call anyone, didn't post anything. Didn't explain myself to anybody. The truth doesn't always need promotion. Sometimes it just needs someone willing not to step aside. The Tuesday after the reading, I drove to First National Bank. The brass key felt heavier in my pocket than it should have. A clerk led me downstairs to the vault. Box 7714 was on a lower row. Small, plain, unremarkable. Funny, isn't it? How the things that hold your life together rarely look important from the outside. I slid in the key, turned it, and felt the click all the way through my chest. Inside were 5 things. First, the 14 letters my father had sent Murray. I opened the earliest one carefully. Inside, in that familiar slanted handwriting, my father wrote that he was going to have a daughter, that he was naming her Piper, that he hoped Murray would want to meet her. He never knew the letter had been hidden. He never knew his father never received it. I sat there holding proof that before I was even born, my father had tried to offer me to his family like a bridge, and somebody burned the bridge before either side could cross it. Second, there were 22 letters from Murray to Owen, never sent. That broke me in a different way, because my grandfather had tried too. Too late, yes, but sincerely. He wrote about guilt. About shame. About the day he found the hidden letters and couldn't stop shaking. About seeing me for the first time. About knowing instantly whose face I carried. About standing at the door every Saturday trying to act normal while looking at the daughter of the son he had lost. Third, a family photo album. Some pages were damaged. Photos torn out. Corners ripped. I didn't need anyone to tell me who had done that, but some pictures had been taped back together with yellowing Scotch tape. Murray had tried to restore what he could. A grandfather's version of repentance. Fourth, the deed to 27 Elm Street. And fifth, a final envelope, smaller than the others, my name written across the front in shaky blue ink. Piper, I sat on that cold metal bench in the vault room for almost 45 minutes, reading, breathing, starting over. When I finally came out, the clerk looked at me and asked if I was all right. And I heard myself say, yeah, I'm just meeting my family. 27 Elm Street was smaller than I imagined and more important than I was prepared for. 2 bedrooms. Yellow tile in the kitchen that looked original to the Reagan administration. Peeling paint, knee-high grass, a bird nesting in the porch light, and out back the workshop, the wood shop. The one from Murray's stories, the one from my father's life. I unlocked the front door. The air inside smelled stale but not dead, more like pause, like the house had been waiting. There was furniture still there. Simple pieces, strong pieces, made to last, a bookshelf, a couch, a kitchen table scarred by real use. And on the mantel sat a wooden picture frame with hand-carved edges and initials burned into the back. Owen Ashford. I picked it up and just stood there. Because the frame in the old photo of me and Dad, the one he was holding, had the same pattern, same carving style, same hand. He had learned to make those here, in this house, in that workshop. I walked outside, opened the workshop door, dust, pegboard, chisels, a planer, handsaw, workbench, and sitting there on the bench was a half-finished birdhouse. Like someone had stood up mid-project and meant to come back after lunch. I don't know how long I stood there, but I know what I decided. 3 things: I would move into that house. I would use the education trust to enroll in woodworking classes at Blue Ridge Community College, and I would finish that birdhouse. Not because anybody told me to, because my father started it. And I am his daughter. I waited a week before opening Murray's final letter. I wanted to read it somewhere that felt earned. So I sat at the kitchen table at Elm Street, with morning light coming through the yellow tile window and coffee going cold in a chipped mug. His handwriting was shakier in this one, closer to the end. He told me he had found me through a private investigator 4 years before he died. The moment he saw my photo, he wrote, he knew. Owen's jaw, Owen's hands. Owen's way of standing with weight shifted to the left foot. He said he wanted to knock on my apartment door and tell me everything. Wanted to say, I'm your grandfather. I'm sorry, but he was afraid. Afraid Garrett would interfere. Afraid Garrett would threaten my job, my housing, my life the way he had controlled Owen's. So he chose the safest path he could think of. Pizza delivery. One predictable transaction. One private moment hidden inside something ordinary. Then came the line I will carry the rest of my life. The $2 were never a tip, Piper. They were the only thing I could hand you myself. I had to stop reading after that. Because suddenly every Saturday came back to me all at once. His hand placing those bills in mine. That pause at the door. Those small questions. Not random. Not habit. Love under surveillance. He ended the letter with words written larger than the rest, as if his hand was failing but his meaning couldn't. You have his hands. Build something. I folded the letter and put it in my flannel pocket. Then I sat there in the quiet and let that sentence settle into the shape of my future. I want to talk directly to the person listening right now for a second. I didn't tell you this story so you would hate Garrett, though I'd understand if you do. And I didn't tell it so you would feel sorry for me. I told it because there are people hearing this who believe the silence in their life means they were unwanted. That the person who never called must not have cared. That the family who stayed away did so because they were easy to forget. I believed that for years, then one envelope proved something different. Silence is not always absence. Sometimes silence is interference. Sometimes there was love and someone stood in front of it. Sometimes there were letters you never got. Sometimes there was a door you thought nobody knocked on. And no, that truth doesn't fix everything. It doesn't give you your years back. It doesn't resurrect the people you lost. It doesn't undo damage, but it gives you something else. Ground, a place to stand that isn't made of lies, and once you have truth, you can build from it. That's the part nobody tells you. Healing isn't always about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about accurate information. Sometimes the first step toward peace is simply discovering that the story that hurt you was false. Garrett spent 25 years controlling a narrative. Vivian spent 25 years decorating it. And when the truth finally walked into that conference room wearing flannel and work boots, all it took was one notarized document and the courage not to leave. Truth is patient. It waits. And when it finally gets the room, it doesn't have to shout. 6 months later, here's where I am. I live at 27 Elm Street, The grass is cut. The porch railing is sanded and restained. Badly but solid. The bird still nests in the porch light. I left it there. The workshop is cleaner now, not perfect, lived in, used, mine. I enrolled in the woodworking program at Blue Ridge Community College. Turns out I'm good at it. Or maybe good is the wrong word. Maybe some things feel familiar before they feel skilled. My instructor told me I work wood like somebody who grew up around it. And I told her I did, even if I didn't know that while it was happening. Rosa comes by on Saturdays. She brings pizza. Pepperoni always. We sit on the porch and eat with paper plates on our knees. She is the closest thing I have to family that is still breathing, and she knows it without me having to say it. In the living room, I hung one photo from Murray's album. It shows Murray holding my father when my dad was about 5 years old, both of them grinning, the workshop behind them. On the back, in Murray's handwriting, it says, "My boys." Next to it, I hung the photo of me and my dad with the wooden frame. The two pictures side by side, past and future touching at the edges. The brass key hangs on a hook by the front door. It doesn't open anything anymore, but I keep it where I can see it. A reminder that sometimes the smallest object in your hand is the thing that opens your entire life. And every Saturday I eat pepperoni pizza, not out of nostalgia, not out of grief. Out of recognition, because that was how my grandfather found me. If you ask me who Murray Ashford was, I'll tell you this. He was the man who tipped me $2 every Saturday for 3 years. It was all he could give. It was everything he had. And somehow it was enough. It was always enough. Thank you for staying with me to the end. If there's someone you've lost, someone you never got to say everything to, what would you write them now? Even one sentence. Even just their name. You can leave it in the comments if you want. And if this story found a place in you you weren't expecting, share it with somebody who might need it. Because more people than you think are living inside silence that was never their fault. And sometimes hearing the truth from someone else is the first step toward finding your own.